Hi, I'm Mary Beth Lynn, your systems and delegation coach, and I love getting to help travel advisors go from overwhelmed to being in control CEOs. I have a bunch of free resources for you as you go through Prep for Wave Week. You can scan the QR code or text the number below. I want to send you a couple really awesome things that are going to help you not be overwhelmed when the wave hits.
Running a travel business can be overwhelming, but imagine if there was a single tool that helped you look professional, stay organized, was easy to use, and affordable. That's just what Travefy does. Travefy gives you the essential tools you need to look like a travel biz pro. Travefy is the most trusted system used by over 30,000 travel brands worldwide. So get started with a system that helps you get back to the joy of planning travel and run your travel business like a pro with Travefy.
Hi, I'm Tom Carpenter. Welcome to another session that I'm doing for Prep for Wave. This week, I've got a couple of different sessions. I want to just give a shout out to Rita Perez for inviting me. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate and to make these presentations. I'm going to just get right into it. So this session is going to be about terms and conditions. So we're going to talk about terms that travel well. And why a custom terms and conditions document is your agency's best travel companion. So just to get started, this is where you can find me if you feel like you need to reach out. Happy to set up a consultation call with you at some point if you need me for anything. Just to get a couple of things out of the way, excuse me. This may be viewed as attorney advertising. I am not intending to provide specific legal advice about any one subject. By participating in this webinar, we're not creating any kind of an attorney-client relationship, and prior outcomes don't guarantee future results. If you've seen other presentations I've done, including the ones this week, this is all familiar to you. I'm not going to dwell on who I am, but in addition to practicing law, I also own an agency. So most of my clients are travel agencies and tour operators. I do some work in the entertainment industry as well. But I also own a hosted travel agency. I have clients all around the country. Okay, so let's get into it. So if you've seen other presentations I've done, this is usually at the top of most of them. Travel is a high-risk industry. There are all sorts of things that can go wrong when your clients are traveling or when you're booking travel for your clients. And so this is where you might want to have a terms and conditions document in place to make sure that you are fully protected from all the risk that comes with booking travel. So a terms and conditions document is going to be the boilerplate for all of the trips you do, whether that's a group booking, whether it's a destination wedding, whether it's adventure travel, culinary travel, FIT, cruises, sun and fun vacations, anything you do, you're going to want to have one terms and conditions document that's kind of the baseline for everything that you're booking. It should really be structured as a legal agreement between you and your client. Because it's a legal agreement, you need to actually get your client to sign on to it. And I have a strong view, and we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get into it, that a custom terms and conditions document is much more preferable than having some sort of cookie cutter template that you're pulling down off of the internet or renting or buying from somebody or generating it through AI. Why do you need a terms and conditions document? So the number one reason that is coming up more and more frequently is it's really impossible for you to win a chargeback dispute if you don't have terms and conditions document in place. We'll talk about chargebacks in another session. I talk about it a little bit in my session on fraud that I did for this week. But the other thing is that there are certain disclosures that you need to make when you're selling travel. The Department of Transportation, state seller of travel laws, those things need to be disclosed. So you'll want to have written proof that you've given advisories to your clients if something comes up. You don't want your clients saying, well, you never told me I could, cannabis is legal where I live. You never told me that I couldn't bring my weed gummies on a cruise with me. You can put that in your terms and conditions so they can't say that you never advised them about that. And then if you have a dispute with a client, having an actual terms and conditions document that contains legal protections for your agency can really be a lifesaver. So that's why you need them. In terms of what goes into them, sometimes people say, I just want it to be short. Well, there's really no way to cover all the bases and have it be a short document. but these are the five main categories that that most of the provisions fall into when I draft terms and conditions documents for people. Legally required disclosures. I mentioned earlier that the government requires certain disclosures. If you're selling airline tickets, if you are selling travel to residents of certain states, you need to make those disclosures. You can take care of that in your terms and conditions document. Your role as a travel agent versus your role as a travel advisor. Sometimes people say, well, which am I? Am I a travel agent or am I a travel advisor? We're all calling ourselves advisors now, which is true. But as a travel agent, you are the booking agent for a supplier. As a travel advisor, you are the advising your clients and giving them your best professional judgment in terms of where to go, what's the best trip for their traveling style, all of that. So you have a fiduciary obligation to the suppliers you book. You can't misrepresent their product or undercut their pricing strategies. You can't sell at a rate that's lower than what the market rate is that they're advertising. But you also have an obligation to your client. So being in that middle zone where you have obligations that flow in both directions is a little bit of a complicated place to be. So you want to make sure that when you're giving your clients advice, that you are, or when your clients are agreeing to your terms and conditions, rather, that you are explaining to the client what your role is and what your role isn't. And that's really important. Advisories to clients. I mentioned advising them that they can't travel with illegal drugs. There are other advisories about safety, where they can go to find the advisories and alerts if they have questions about whether it's safe to travel to a destination. Cancellation and refund policies also really important. That's something that you absolutely have to have in your terms and conditions document, but you also want to make it clear that you don't set the terms and conditions. This goes back to the agent versus advisor question. As the travel agent, as the booking agent, you don't set the supplier's cancellation and refund policy, so you want to be clear about that in your terms and conditions document. And then limitations on liability and force majeure. That is a provision that's really important. That basically says that your clients are agreeing in your terms and conditions document that they can't come after you for something that is really a supplier issue. So, for example, you book your clients at a resort. They were supposed to have an ocean view room. The hotel was oversold in that category. They moved them to the back of the hotel, overlooking the dumpsters. It smelled horrible, and the clients want to sue you because you booked them at that resort and told them it was a lovely place to go. Well, you don't have control over the room inventory. That's a supplier issue. So your clients can agree in your terms and conditions document that you are not responsible for those supplier issues because you are not the supplier. And again, that kind of goes back to the agent versus advisor role. Limitations on liability can also include things like you're not responsible for your supplier policies. If there's a cancellation and refund policy that they don't get a refund, you're not responsible for that. And even if the supplier goes bankrupt and fails to deliver the services entirely, you're not responsible for that either. So accidents, injuries, bankruptcy, your limitation on liability provision is probably one of the most important things to have in your terms and conditions document. Force majeure, some people call that the act of God language. That basically says if you can't do something, it's impossible for you to do something you're supposed to do. Force majeure language is what takes you off the hook. So a big wildfire threatens your neighborhood, you have to evacuate, you don't have an internet connection, and you missed a bunch of payments. Well, that wildfire is a force majeure event. It's unforeseen, unpredictable, outside of your control. And this is the language that takes you off the hook for that. So those are all really important things to have in your document. Again, those are just categories. Those are not specific provisions. But depending on the types of trips you book and the types of clients you work with, you might want to have something different in your terms than the agency across town. So the questions you might want to ask yourself is, are you holding yourself out as a specialist in any type of travel? So I might put something different in your terms and conditions if you do a lot of school groups, compared to if you did a lot of destination weddings or culinary travel or adventure travel. Are you hosting and escorting your groups? Are you traveling with your clients? That might be a reason that you might need to have um, provisions in your terms and conditions that talk about that. Are you making disclosures that you need to make because of the types of trips you book and types of clients you need? And what state are you in? Because there are certain types of provisions that are not enforceable in some states. And so we might want to say, for example, that the courts in your local jurisdiction have to apply the law of a neighboring state where something like an exculpatory waiver, that's a legal term, but waivers basically, some states waivers aren't enforceable. And so you'd want to make sure that you've got the right state law for your document. So just plugging in the state where you live isn't necessarily going to work for you. So keep that all in mind. One of those things that I mentioned earlier, are you a specialist? If you specialize in any of these areas, I would recommend that if you're telling the world you're an expert in these areas, you're probably going to want to have language specific to those types of trips. So I'll just give an example. For culinary travel, I have some clients who specialize in travel for people with gluten allergies, people with celiac disease. So if that's your business model and you're telling the world that you specialize in that, you're probably going to want to have something in your terms that says that you're not responsible if the restaurants or the cruise line or the hotels don't follow the dietary restrictions and somebody gets sick. That's not necessarily something that you're going to want to have in your document if you book the occasional person with a food allergy. But if you're telling the world that you're an expert in that, you're basically raising the bar for yourself. So as a travel advisor, you owe a duty of care to your clients. If you're telling people, I'm an expert in wellness travel, and then you send them someplace where the people are not qualified to do the med spa treatments that they're offering, or the yoga instructor has them do something that actually injures them. If you have specialized knowledge, you're going to need to disclaim that specialized knowledge in your terms and conditions document. However, if you only occasionally do a trip that falls into one of those categories, you're going to want to have more general language. And this is something that's not always intuitive to people, but if you're not a specialist, you don't want to put something in your terms and conditions that creates the impression that you have some sort of specialized knowledge. Because if you disclaim certain things, but not other things, it's going to be a problem for you. So, you might, if you don't tell the rest of the world, for example, that you know all about skydiving trips, you're an expert in that, then why would you want to invite people to pick apart your terms and conditions language if you book a one-off skydiving trip and there's something in there that's so specific that it excludes other things, if that makes sense. One thing that you can't put in your terms and conditions, and this is really, really important, you need to disclose who your supplier is. Courts don't actually require that you disclose the supplier, but it's a problem for you if you don't, because there are court cases out there that say if you don't disclose who the supplier is, then you become responsible for everything and anything that goes wrong on that trip. Basically, you're kind of turning yourself into a tour operator. I recommend that you put a provision in your terms and conditions document that says that the client understands that the supplier has their own terms and conditions, and that's part of the deal when they work with you, that they are automatically agreeing to whatever those supplier terms turn out to be. There's actually some good law out there that you don't have to separately get them to agree to the supplier terms when they agree to your terms, as long as you've got the right language in your terms and conditions document. Okay, so you don't want to be a tour operator. I think I mentioned that earlier, but a lot of times people have questions about, well, when do I become a tour operator? And if you travel with your groups, if you do come with me trips, you host and escort your groups, that is maybe one little pinky toe into the lane of being a tour operator. It's extremely low risk, so I don't think you really need to worry about it. But if you're taking net rates and marking it up, if you're handling client funds for things other than your service fees, if you bundle trip elements together and charge one price for it, those things all start to make you look more and more like a tour operator. But the number one thing that will turn you into a tour operator is if you white label trips and you fail to disclose who the supplier is. So white labeling a trip, if you don't tell them that you've booked this trip through G Adventures, or you've booked it through Globus, or you've booked it through Royal Caribbean, then this is the case, Van Rossum v. Penny Travel, where a court has held that it's reasonable for the client to hold you responsible for everything and anything that goes wrong because you didn't tell them who the real responsible party was. You sold the trip, you white labeled it, and you made it look like it was you. So I get it that people don't want tire kickers shopping around and checking them on price, but really, this is a lot of liability to take on. If a motor coach goes over the cliff, you don't want to be responsible for those injuries or, heaven forbid, deaths, right? You don't want to be responsible for giving refunds when your clients are canceling a trip and the supplier is not giving you a refund. So make sure in your terms and conditions document you don't have things where it makes it look like you're taking responsibility for things that are the tour operator's responsibilities. Things like pricing and inclusions, I see these in a lot of documents. You don't want to take responsibility for pricing. In fact, I would recommend that you have a provision that says that the supplier sets the pricing and that you specifically don't have control over that. Room configuration, payment processing, how payments are processed, refunds, anything like this where it looks like you're taking responsibility for the safety or the quality of services. Those are things that you're going to want to keep out of your terms because those look like tour operator terms. And if you're pulling things down off of the internet and you see something, you think, oh, that looks good, I'm going to put that in. It might actually be a problem for you. Once you have a strong terms and conditions document, it is really, really important to get your client to actually agree to it. You need your clients to agree to a terms document affirmatively because it's not a contract if there's no actual agreement. You want to be able to go into court if you, heaven forbid, hopefully you'll never need to do that, but you want the ability to go into court to explain to the judge what the issue is so that you can enforce those terms. I suggest that you use a client agreement as a shorter, more easy way to get a new client to sign on to your terms. The idea is you take your terms and conditions document, upload it to the internet, tuck it away someplace on a web page, and then the clients can just check a box in your tech tool, if you're using Turn or TravelJoy or Travify or Vacation CRM or Vacation Creation. You can build a client agreement form. Just have them check a box. I agree to your terms and conditions, which are located at www. Wherever you've posted it. It's easy for them. It's easy for you. Whether they go to your website and read the terms, that's up to them. But when they check that box on the form, that's enough to create a legally binding agreement. You also want to have your clients agree to your terms and conditions document as part of the credit card authorization language. And in the chargeback session, we'll talk a little bit more about why that's important. But the credit card companies are not going to let you win a chargeback dispute if you don't have some magic language there. So we'll talk about that in another session. But key takeaways here: having a terms and conditions document is really no longer optional. You need to have a terms and conditions document if you're operating in the travel industry. It's a high-risk industry. All sorts of things can come back to bite you. And that contractual document between you and the client really does protect you. So it does need to be a contractual document. It needs to be agreed to by your clients specifically. Your terms need to cover the boilerplate issues, but you also need some customization for the types of trips you book and the types of clients you work with. So cookie cutter is not going to help you out a whole lot, especially if you've got specialties or niches that you're marketing and advertising to people. You want to disclaim specialized knowledge. You don't want to tell the world that you have responsibility for things that you specialize in, but you also don't want to take responsibility for things that you don't specialize in and create the impression that you have more control over those things. So again, this is where you can find me if you feel like you need to get in touch with me. I am more than happy to set up a consultation call with anybody who wants to talk about their terms and conditions. If you've got something you're using now, you want us to look at it, one of the attorneys on my team would be happy to take a look and give you some feedback. Obviously, if you're good to go, you're good to go. You don't need to spend money to fix something that's not broken. But I do have a strong view that you're probably going to want to have a terms and conditions document in place for your travel agency, so that you are fully protected. So that's what I have for you today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to uh, participate in this session. Um, and thanks again to Rita for making it possible for us to present this to you today. Thank you. Bye bye.